Welcome to the Stay on Track podcast with Poolson and Oden Law Firm. I'm Danny Poolson, along with my fantastic co-host, Carisa Oden. We're here today recording and airing our very first podcast, episode number 1.
Mm-hmm.
So today on episode 1 of Stay on Track podcast, we're introducing ourselves, who we are. We're talking about approaching lawyers and what questions to ask before hiring a lawyer. So without further ado, let's get started on who we are. So we'll start ladies first with Carisa.
I knew it.
Tell us a little bit about you, your background, who you are.
I think part of what most of my clients, and maybe just Michael, who's closest to me, know like about my backstory would be that like all my family, and thinking about it recently, they're all like workers, right? So both my grandfathers worked in mines. My dad always worked construction. My mom was a teacher. My uncles all did construction. And so when I was little, he worked at the same construction company for 17 years, which is interesting because that's when I left my other firm, right? Like 17 years. Anyway, he got really sick when I was in kindergarten. And he got sick working because they didn't give him the proper PPE. So like he's down in these holes. He got an infection in his leg in the hospital, clots in his heart, called my mom, said, probably not gonna make it. He's like 27 at this point, 28. And so, she goes, and my whole life growing up, I heard her be so angry at this company that, depleted all their savings. They told him they didn't have comp. He didn't sue them, right? And so I grew up like listening to them thinking there should have been somebody that, that they wish there would have been somebody to help them.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know, really anything about that. I think that imprinted on me this like desire when I see these like railroaders or other workers, like I think about my dad, I think.
So you would say you're competitive and have a fighting spirit.
Yeah, definitely.
And do you give that credit to your mom and dad?
Definitely, yeah.
And that's Kim and Jack German.
Yes.
Name plug, give the Jack in this case.
Yeah. No, like my mom always said that she was a teacher because my dad provided, and it's something she loved, but she couldn't support us on that.
Mm-hmm.
And dad just was like, I'm gonna get whatever I need to get done for my family. And it's like times when he didn't have a job, Quentin and I were always aware of that. And he was like, it's gonna be fine because we're gonna figure it out and I'm gonna protect you, right? Like that, he was definitely a protector. So I never felt any kind of, like I wasn't aware that my dad was so sick when I was in kindergarten, right? I remember visiting him in the hospital, but I didn't learn all that till later. I never thought about like how much maybe that influenced, like seeing them go through that and seeing like after giving all of himself to this company for so many years, that it wasn't like our guys, like, right, they don't have comp. Like this is a company that had comp and was just like, you don't know that, you don't know that we're supposed to have it. My dad didn't know that at the time. He didn't know that he could have had a legal issue,
For sure. It's
a lot of
it's the big corporations protecting themselves rather than protecting the people in their employ. So going to your point about what sort of drives you and motivates you, your first legal job was with a firm that specialized in representing railroaders. It connected
like
with your
aligned,
values. Yes, aligned. Yes.
Yeah, and I think that was just God. There's times I think in all of our lives where you don't see that bigger plan till later, right? All these pieces, you're trucking along and, you make certain decisions that seem very like vanilla, right? Like, oh, I'm gonna go apply for this job or I'm gonna talk to this person. And then it ends up that path is something that God has definitely guided you on. I think that was one of those moments because I was working at a bar, right? I didn't know what I was gonna do after college, finished with the English degree. And I just happened to have a regular that was working at that law firm who didn't like to read and write. So she was like, aren't you looking for a real job? So this bartending gig. And I was like, yeah. She's like, you probably like to read the stuff that he makes me read every day and I'm going to sleep. She hated it.
So you studied English at Loyola College, volleyball player. And so you didn't know exactly what you were going to end up doing, but it sounds like you had at this bar you worked at, you had an interaction that kind of led you to your first legal job.
Yes.
Okay.
And I went in and the managing partner there, the owner, our interview was, I don't know, 5 seconds. And he really just asked if I could read and write and where I went to school. And he was like, okay, I went to Loyola, that's good, check. And then he said, you can read and write. Like, yes, sir. Yeah, I can do that. And so he had me come in and like edit some of his letters. And then hired me as a file girl.
And so when you started out as a file girl, your first legal job, helping railroaders.
Yeah, that's all he did.
That's all he
So
did.
for 40, probably more 30 years at that time, that's all he had done. He kind of stumbled into having a railroader as a client and looked, and the law was different. And he said, okay, well, this looks good for these workers. I've never heard of FILA, but I'm gonna go work this case, and ended up trying it, like his first railroad case. And at the time when they were, the railroads were paying very, very little for injury cases, he was like, I don't know why that is, so maybe let me go see what a jury thinks about this. And probably got 5 times what they were offering him.
You start as a file girl.
Yeah.
How do you become this railroad injury attorney?
Started as a file girl. The office manager that we had, she'd been there for like 30 years, so she trained me. She'd been there with Ben the entire time, so trained me. We lost a paralegal, and within like 6 months of me being there, so managing partner asked if I wanted to try to do that. I said, sure. So worked as a paralegal for him and some other attorneys that we worked cases with. Became a litigation paralegal, and then decided I wanted to go to law school. He recommended, did a recommendation for me, went to law school, offered me a job before I even started law school to come back. So I thought that was nice to know that I already had a place to come back to. Became a lawyer, and then for him, then helped him manage the practice after 10 years. My partner at that firm, so there was the, managing partner, and then there were 2 of us that were working on cases. So that partner, he wanted to become a judge. And so I had pictured us, being there together, working on the cases, eventually becoming like the managing partners of that firm together. When I figured out that his ambition was different than mine, right? That made me start thinking about what do I want to do? Do I want to be here without him, knowing that he was going to go do something else? I had a case for family member that I was pretty close to that was significant, and I had a strong urge to make sure that that case, we took care of him. And there was just some differences in how we were going to do that. So my thought was I need to take this case somewhere with me where I could make sure it was handled right. Protected, yeah. Okay. Yes, and so I had felt for a while after finding out that my partner was gonna, that was his path, what he wanted, his like dreams, what he wanted to do, that I needed to figure out for me, like if that, am I staying or am I going? Yeah. And the conclusion was I was gonna go. I think part of the reason our paths converged was that case that was so important to me, your firm that you were with had a newsletter. I think you either wrote the article in there or I had a copy of it. And so we had seen each other at a conference.
And Carisa might have forgot who I was because I used to have hair.
Totally remembered. Yeah. So yeah, we saw each other again, and then it was like God was sprinkling you into my life. Like I see you again, right? And then I get the newsletter, and then it's like the legal issue was exactly on point for what I thought for this case. I came to see you to talk about it at your office. And then it just it's like one of those things, I don't know if you've had those things where it's just constantly on your heart. It's like it continues to come in at different times. So you were on my brain often, and so I think that was God's way of kind of pushing that this may be a good way. So then I think we had lunch. You gave me great advice about what I needed to do to make sure that my decision was something that was best for me, which
Yeah.
I always appreciated. It wasn't what I wanted to hear, which I also think is a great point, because I was like, no, I've made up my mind to leave, now I wanna come, to your place.
Practice together.
Yeah, I wanna
Yeah.
practice together, and you were right, like, I needed to make sure that all those, I'm gonna call them loose ends, but whatever it was, I needed to make sure that when I jumped, it was like the right jumping point.
Yeah. But that leads me to my next question. The Mike O, for those who don't know him yet. So during all of this, right, the transition where you're thinking about taking the jump, Mike Oden, your consummate spouse, how is he? How are y'all? Tell us a little bit about that.
Mike's always good, that's one thing that everybody says about Mike, he's so easy. And yeah, I think he had watched, my progression at the other firm. He knew because of how I am, he knew I wasn't happy there, even before everything. He knew that like there needed to be more of a challenge and a push. We just didn't know what direction. So no, Mike, he's amazing. It's like he's always thinking about the other person, and he's like, yeah, I'm gonna support you no matter what. There's no question. Like when I told him, I had met with you and we were working on that one maritime case together, and how much I enjoyed that, and if I was making the right decision, he was always so supportive, and he knows how I am. I was kind of like, I'm gonna do this, and he's like, I know, good. He kind of knows it before I know, and he's always kind of like, I know, go.
And to give Mike O some more credit, when we connected at that maritime conference before the newsletter,
He knew who you were.
he remembered. Yeah, thank you, Mike O, for at least you remembered.
He did.
I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
he
Where
said-
Carisa was like, I don't know who the bald head guy is.
He was like, lots of hair, big smile, always happy. Danny Poolson.
Yeah.
Say now that we've introduced ourselves, personally and professionally, we're gonna talk about topic 2, and it's about approaching lawyers. And maybe, Danny, if you could tell us a little bit about our firm, like what you've seen that we do differently than maybe other firms, about us being regular humans. And
For sure. At the kind of the way I think about it is, if you have a question, ask it, right? And it seems so simple, right? But sometimes it's so tough, and there's a misconception out there that lawyers are unapproachable, right? Or you can't get to us, or we're too busy. And time is certainly our most valuable asset, right?
Right.
But our time as lawyers is service for others, right? And so what we've done here is, on our website, we have a live chat, right? Technology is here, it's not going away.
Mhm.
So for folks who don't want to make phone calls, right, me included, I would prefer to text, right? We've set up a texting feature at our office where you can text our firm directly, right? And you can ask your question and get it answered without having to actually get on the phone. We also have an intake specialist whose job is to answer the phone, take in all your questions and all your data, and then give it to Chris and I to then get you an answer, right? And then that kind of goes to how we help people and who we help, right? And I think another misconception is that, we see in our sign here, railroad injury attorneys, they only help railroaders, they're exclusively for railroaders. Chris and I work hard for anyone who's hurt or has a legal question. And if we're not the right firm, we guide those people in need of legal services to the best firms who handle that specific legal issue and have the best reputation in the community to handle that legal issue for that prospective client who's just needing a question answered. And so I think big picture, we're here to be approachable. The service we provide is legal, but at the end of the day, we're simply humans helping humans. And from a team approach, we strive to do that, to have everyone on our team understand that there's humans out there who need legal services, and our job is to provide them for those people.
Being the person in the office that's, on that kind of team with Annie at times, we take fewer cases than the calls that we get. So we're answering a bunch of questions each day and sending letters to potential clients on other, for other attorneys they can call to help. I mean, that's a big part of what Annie does. I mean, those are things that every day, she's talking to other humans that have a question and she's getting it answered. And that's what our intake specialists do here. I mean, and they enjoy that, right? It's not, you're not bothering us or them by having a question that we can help you get answered.
Yeah, you're actually helping our intake specialists do something, right? Give her something to do. No, in all seriousness though, I mean, we have an intake team that addresses incoming calls. It's a circumstance where, especially if it's an emergency, you know, you were in an accident or something that's urgent where you have an on-duty injury or something like that, don't hesitate. That's what we talk about in our office. We don't wait, we don't hesitate, we preach that to our team.
Okay.
We do that ourselves in our practice, right? So don't hesitate. So if you have a question, don't hesitate, reach out. And if the lawyer is not approachable, then maybe it's not the right lawyer for you. Surprisingly, we actually reject more cases than we accept, but our rejection process is to make sure, just because we're not the right law firm for the client, doesn't mean there's not a right law firm for that client. We make sure that that client gets to the right law firm. And I think that's important when you're approaching lawyers. One, they need to be approachable. And two, you need to make sure, and I'm kind of jumping into topic 3 a little bit, but you need to make sure that the law firm you're hiring is the right law firm for you and your legal circumstances.
Yeah, no, I think that's an excellent point, because you don't want to be walking down a road with an attorney that isn't, you know, like for our railroad cases or maritime cases, we have a specialty in those areas. And so we are the right firm for those cases with that specialty, just like we're the right firm for individuals that are hurt, right? That's what we do, right? When we get calls about, you know, family law issues or maybe contracts, we know other attorneys in our community, right? That's one of the things, and Danny's excellent at this. He has a huge network of, you know, people here in Louisiana, Mississippi. We're licensed in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas. We can get you to the right folks that can help you, right? We don't want you walking down a road with an attorney that, you know, with us even, that we're not the best ones for you. So we really do pride ourselves in making sure that you're going to get to the right person that can help.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think that brings us to our topic 3.
Yes, looks like it. Topic 3. What questions to ask before hiring a lawyer? Yeah, I mean, I think they should definitely ask, what type of law do you practice, right? Do you have other cases that are similar to what I've been through? You know, how many of those kind of cases do you handle? You know, and those would be some of the big ones that I would ask if I was, you know, looking for a lawyer.
Another thing, when you're asking how many cases like mine you've handled, especially in complex areas of law, like FILA or Jones Act and maritime work, you want to make sure that law firm actually has a subspecialty in the injury practice. In the injury world, you want to make sure that the lawyer you're hiring has handled cases like yours, and you want to ask about the results that potential law firm has gotten for cases similar to yours.
Yeah.
The one that I think is very important here is, if I hire you or your law firm, will you be working on my case personally? I think that's a very important question. And Carisa, what do you think the prospective client should want to hear from that question?
I mean, they should hear yes, that, you know, you'd be working on their case. If they hear no, I would ask a few more questions about why, right? Because sometimes, and even in our practice, we get referred cases from other attorneys, or we may have a case and we're referring the case to another attorney, but that's all putting together the best legal team for the client, right? So we work with other lawyers, and we don't, you know, I think a lot of clients go, oh, now I've got to pay for 2 lawyers, like that, but that makes sense. You're not paying for another lawyer. We're actually cutting our fee in the case to have another member to be on that legal team with you, right? Like we're sharing in that together, so that you can have the best people to, you know, working on your case. So yeah, I mean, I think I would ask a few more questions if the lawyer's like, no, I'm not going to be working on your case personally, just to make sure that attorney that you're hiring, that's not what they mean, that they're just kind of giving it to someone else, or they're not going to be touching it anymore. And I think in our practice, we we have of course, our team that's talking to the clients very often, because if we're talking to each client all the time, every day, we're not working on their case, right? And we need to work on the case so that we can help close the case and bring closure and protect the family and make sure that we're getting top dollar for them. So I think it's just a few more questions that they need to ask to make sure that they're, if the attorney they're talking to is going to be staying with them, and be walking on the journey with them. And if they are going to be with another attorney or another team of attorneys, like what the reason for that is.
And what it looks like.
Yeah, what it looks like, yeah.
I equate the lawyer-client relationship a lot to the doctor-patient relationship. It's sacred. And knowing who you're going to be working with and feeling comfortable with who you're going to be working with. That's what's important. So Chris and I are partners because we agree with collaboration. And unfortunately, specifically for the railroad industry or big corporations, big insurance companies, as soon as something happens, they're putting a team together to cut against that claim or that case, right? And so collaboration is not a bad thing. Collaboration is actually a good thing. And Chris is right. We'll share in fees when we collaborate with other firms to put a team together, especially cases out of state where we have local counsel and we're getting the right venue for the right filing and things like that. But it's a sacred relationship, and you want to make sure that Chris is 100% right. If that attorney that you're speaking with is not working on your case, okay, who is working on my case? What's the team look like that you're building around me for my case? And are you comfortable with that legal team? And if you're not, keep searching, because it's a sacred relationship. You want to make sure, because when you sign on with a law firm, the journey then begins. That's when the real work starts to begin. And so for some of these cases, it could take 12, 18, 24 months. You're going to be together a long time, doing a lot of work together. And so you want to make sure you're comfortable with that law firm, the legal team that's surrounding you. One question that we get a lot that I think is a good question is, how often do cases like mine go to trial versus how often do they settle, and what are the results that your law firm has obtained? Most cases do not go to trial. In our office, we prepare every case as if it's going to trial, so we're ready. And what's important about that is putting the pieces together and really knowing the evaluation of the claim and the true worth of it, and being able to obtain the result based on the law, facts, and medicine of each client's individual case without the risk of trial and avoiding the stress of trial. Now, that being said, what Chris and I do, we're trial attorneys, and that's our role, and we do that when it's necessary, but it's not after giving the carrier or the insurance company the opportunity to do the right thing and provide the right compensation based on what that client has gone through. And then the results. I think it's important to understand that law firm's results, what they've gotten, and let them show you the data. Ask them, what result have you gotten for a case like this? And how does it look if I've been through this situation? Have you handled that? And just kind of dig into it and ask some questions. And if the lawyers don't want to give you that information, or if they don't want to share it with you, then maybe that's kind of giving you the answer, because the lawyers should be very comfortable just letting you know the types of cases they handle and the types of results they've obtained.
No, I totally agree. And I don't know if the podcast is to plug PO, right, as the lawyer that you want to call. But I would say that one of the things, you talked about at the beginning, that there are definitely, definitely firms that, either know that, like opposing counsel, that know whether a law firm is going to work or not work. And I think one of the examples in our office that I'm super proud of with our team is we have, had a case, railroad attorney on the other side, and the railroad itself claims our team had been just on them about getting some information that we needed. And they accidentally sent an email back that said, "These people are relentless. Please just give them the information. I keep getting 1,000 emails." And I think that's how we work, right? Like that, we're going to show up, we're going to work, we're going to be here, they're going to want to give it to us because they're going to be over it. I think another good question that a potential client should ask a lawyer is, how many cases does that lawyer currently have? What do you think about that question? And how would you answer that?
It's a question that I think is not asked enough, that you should definitely ask. How many cases are you handling? Because if the attorney you're hiring is handling hundreds of cases, then how much attention is your case gonna get, and
How much focus are they gonna have on yours, yeah.
Yeah, right, I mean,
Mhm.
it seems, when you talk about it, it seems common sense, but it's something that we don't get asked really ever, and so I would encourage you to ask that question: how many cases do you have, and how many are you working? And if they're working hundreds of cases, well, then who's the team they're putting around them that's gonna be around you working on your case? If you're hesitant to ask a law firm these very basic questions, they may not be the best law firm for you, because our job as lawyers, we took an oath, we serve. And we should be able to answer these questions because, again, if you're seeing a physician and it's some sort of special surgery or procedure or operation, you want to know, has this surgeon performed this operation? Has this surgeon dealt with this type of diagnosis or disease or injury? How many people in the community have used this surgeon? How many people in the community have had a positive result from this surgeon? And how many patients does this surgeon see? Is the surgeon performing 8 operations at the same time?
Mhm.
Oh my goodness, run for the hills, right? No. So very, very similar to the doctor-patient relationship, how many cases are you handling as a lawyer?
Mhm.
And if there's any resistance or hesitation from the lawyer to answer that question, you may have your answer there.
Right.
I think transparency is key. We talk about brutal honesty, show, don't tell. We talk about that at trial with the jurors. We talk about that in our office. We call it Tell the Truth Monday.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday,
Tell the
Thursday.
Truth Tuesday, right? Right, we got that from Coach O at
There you
LSU,
go.
right? Tell the truth and brutal honesty. And if there's a lack of transparency at the outset of the lawyer-client relationship, we think it's probably only going to deteriorate and most likely get worse.
Mhm.
So transparency is key, clarity is key. If you have any hesitation about asking those questions, call us and ask us the questions.
We'll answer those questions, that's fine.
Okay, another good question, we don't get too often. What percentage of your practice is made up of cases like mine?
It's a good question. Yeah, and I think that, just like Danny mentioned for the last question we talked about, it's a question that should be asked more. I think that for us, that we talk about our experience, right? So that is an experience question that you're asking that attorney. And for us, we doing personal injury, catastrophic personal injury, and then having subspecialties in maritime and railroad, we're very comfortable answering that we've handled cases similar to on-duty injuries for railroaders and maritime workers, and that you should ask, like, okay, how much experience do you have in those areas? And I think that's super important. It's those areas of law are very specialized. There's a lot of nuances and obstacles that can happen in your cases, and you want someone that has experienced that before.
Yeah, and it sounds critical, but a jack of all trades is a master of none.
Mm-hmm.
And you really want to make sure in any arena, not just the injury arena, but any arena, whether it's criminal law, white collar crime, whatever it is, family law, domestic disputes, custody issues, you want to make sure that the law firm you're interviewing, the percentage of their practice is heavily devoted to that legal issue. Because if it's not, the jack of all trades is master of none. You may not have the best lawyer handling your legal issue, and that is a recipe for disaster sometimes.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, that's topic 3, and that does it for our very first one, right? Partner, great work. For everyone listening in, thank you very much.
Dad.
Thank you very, very much. Something we talk about in our office is tell us something good. So that's gonna start out as our kind of outro. Tell us something good out there.
Nice.
Please like us and follow us on Facebook to learn more about what we do and who we help. And please tune in for our next episode. We're gonna put together a good list of episodes and different topics that relate both to the legal industry and outside the legal industry. And for Carissa, I'm Danny. And thank you for staying on track with Poolson and Oden.
Thank you.